Hi, Krystal. I thought of giving you feedback on the piece you have sent me. Okay, so let's start. It is looking a lot better for sure. So I know that we are refining and refining. Let me know if you prefer to work quicker between this piece and another piece so that we don't have to go into detail, okay? Uh, these type of pieces take a long time, especially at the beginning, because we need to understand a lot of things about flourishes, spacing, balance, parallel lines. Okay, so I'm trying to go in detail because I think whatever you are learning from this experience, it will be applicable to many other places. But let me know if you want to finalize this piece as it is, not as it is, but just go ahead and do the refinement instead of going over and learning about all these things. Okay. Okay, so the first thing that I would recommend is probably trying to create ovals that are similar in size. So in here, instead of having these open, I would recommend creating something similar to what you have in there. So extending this swoosh or this flourish and adding it into the other. This is not compulsory, but one thing to take in consideration is the slant that you're using, because you have a space in here. An option is looking if you want to have these 2 points on the same baseline, but it doesn't have to be, but it's a good thing to look for other examples, okay? In here also, I'm thinking it would be nice maybe to extend this flourish again and maybe tackle it in. Okay, so this type of lettering is based on either Copperplate or Spencerian calligraphy. And both of these styles will give you a lot of variations for capitals that you can borrow to do your lettering pieces. So if you go and do research on this type of scripts for capital letters and for flourishes, you're gonna be finding a lot of options, okay? So in here, for example, how do we do ovals? So I think I mentioned the other time, ovals in this type of scripts works in two ways. One is an upright oval, or the slant, that whatever you're using, in this case is very similar to upright, so the ovals will be sort of like at 90 degrees, or the ovals follow the baseline. So in here what I'm doing is I have enlarged this and tackle things in. In Copperplate, a lot of these ovals are not just open like that, but they go around and close again, making the oval quite obvious. So it is not open so much, but goes open and rounding into the oval. So in here, this oval is following the baseline, okay? And you see the spaces between the two sides will be very similar. All of these ovals in general, and this is not like mathematical, but we say that the height is 2 times the width. And this is not mathematical, but it's just for you to have an idea of the dimensions of these ovals. So the height is twice the width, okay? So now we have this oval a little bit bigger, and I have enlarged this oval, and what I'm doing is cutting the first oval in half, okay? So I'm dividing these two areas more or less in half, so that's the shape. Bigger oval going in, and now doing a second oval and cutting the first one in the middle. As I'm doing in here, you see this oval is upright, this oval is upright, and this oval again follows the slant. So just these two types of ovals, the ones that are upright or the ones that follow the baseline. So in here you have that. Now in here I haven't touched anything, obviously, and then in here, problems. So the problems we have in here is that when we flourish, Normally, we are always going to be flourishing in this type of movements. This is like a basic movement for this type of scripts. And this curve is called a compound curve. And in here, you can see how more or less there is one oval on the one side and two ovals on the other side. Now, for this type of things, the first thing is that do this type of movement, it's not following any of these proportions. So what we need to think is, if we have this movement in here, it's going to look good in terms of flourishing, where we have either this type of movements and then a perpendicular movement cutting. So this is a very common one. So you see there is a perpendicular intersection in here, which it happens in here, which it happens in other places, which it happens for the T. Or we have parallel movements. Okay, so once we have that, then we have that, and it looks really pleasant in the eye because we either have an intersection or we have parallel lines. In this case in here, my eyes are drawn to look at this T and whatever we want to make it, if it's longer or shorter or whatever. And then how can I create something that it is sort of creating a parallel movement and creating all this rhythm so that the eye keeps going. So I'm trying to look for parallel movements and compound curves. This is always a very common element into flourishes. So in here, the first thing I can say is like, if we are gonna use this Q, we can enlarge the Q if we want to, and we can make it go underneath the baseline like we are doing in here for the N, and we will have the oval in here, okay? So that's our capital Q. I wouldn't go and place the parallel lines that you have done on the O too close to each other. So leave a little bit more space in here and you will see that that movement and that movement of the Q are parallel. Now, I have done a sketching here to show you what I have done to try to make the piece a little bit more cohesive in terms of spacing. Before I'm going into there, I'm going to talk about this. Okay, so when we did the script, you will remember that I talked about the middle of these letters is when the thin and thick goes away or goes up apart. So on the U, make sure that when you go here, you have this negative space so that the intersection is more or less in the center, okay? It's not too low like it was in the sketch. It is more or less in the center. For letter E, I always say that I like to see the E as if it was smiling. Okay, so this section in here, I wouldn't go up so straight like that, but I will round it and making it look like if it's a happy E. So this section in here, a little bit rounder, like you have done in these sections in here. And the S. Okay, so for the S, I wouldn't leave it open again. I will tackle the oval in. So this is the slant. So I'm wrapping the S around the slant and then going in and creating another oval and tackling in. So this is again your oval shape. Okay, so this is getting very messy at the moment. Same as in here, I wouldn't leave it straight down. I will go and look for another oval. So I will go down and you have two options, either a vertical oval like this one or an horizontal oval. I don't have any other colors in here. Just a second. Or something that goes horizontally like that. Okay, so you have two options for this type of flourish, either an horizontal N, or as in an horizontal oval, or a vertical oval in here. Okay, so this is what I have done just to polish the flourishes, and keeping in mind that everything needs to look more or less balanced. So, okay, things that I'm looking at in here. I'm looking at this space and this space being similar in terms of dimensions. I'm looking at that this oval will need to go following the baseline and divide it in half. I'm looking at this very, very long tail of the Q, and at some point in here, if we are doing this thin and thick, which I don't know if you're gonna do this in monoline or thin and thick, we'll need to look at in here needs a little bit of weight if you're gonna do thin and thick. And then again, we have another oval in here, okay? This was too fat, so I think this is a lot better. We have another oval in here. So what I've done different from your G is that when we flourish G's, you will see that normally instead of being straight, this turns again into another compound curve. So you see the curve is again in this movement. So it is all the time this type of movements, either horizontally or vertically. So in here is a soft beginning, curvy, and then whatever the flourish that we want. So what I've done in here is apply this soft compound curve, and then we will have an oval, and of course this is not refined, this is just my sketch. And I thought that to balance the flourishes, maybe we can keep going, enlarge this movement and close it in here, okay? And so we have a very similar space in here and in here, okay? If we have this movement going down, and this can be refined as well and see what's the best way to do this curve, but I'm looking at how to create this T that is parallel to this movement so that things have a rhythm. It's all about parallel movements or perpendicular crosses, like in here. So I'm trying to look for something that looks more or less in the way. I don't know if this is the best way to do the Q. This is a very casual way. So you can play around with this shape, and maybe it's better, I don't know, maybe it's better to finish it in instead of out. I'm not too sure. You could do that as well, maybe. Just do the whole lot together. That's also an option. Down. Because this in here looks a little bit, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could work, I don't know. So either this or all together, I don't know. That's options for making this letter grow so that we have something that looks as balanced as possible. Now, things that I will change in here, I like this space, for example. Then I will look for optically a space that is similar in here, okay? So that means or the oval of the N is bigger or the shape of the Q is bigger. So one or the other. But I think if we are going to have this negative space in here, it would be good to have something similar in there so that things look as balanced as possible. And now, if you are going to use this type of flourish for the T, it's up to you if you don't. If you do, then definitely I will move this word stop. I will move it up so that it feels sitting in the center a little bit more instead of like falling down so much in here. Okay, this is just ideas and tips on how to understand what is going on in here and what can be improved from the sketch you sent me, okay? And the S is here, and you see it is wrapping around the angle, and closing the oval inside in. Okay, now things I need to know is what are you going to do with a stop? Are you gonna make it as thick as this, or are you gonna make it a lot thicker? Secondly, so one is what happens with a stop. Second is this piece gonna be a monoline or it's going to be a high contrast? Third, are you gonna be working with Procreate, or are you going to be working with vectors? All right, and the fourth one is how many colors are you thinking of using in terms of color palette? Okay, so these are the next steps. Whatever you decide to do, it's going to be a similar. So if it's pixel based with Procreate or with vectors, in both cases, all these curves are gonna need to be very smooth. So this is gonna be quite a bit of work in terms of like making sure that all these ovals are really nice and smooth. To make your lettering a little bit more light, I would put attention in here, okay? So your ends that have this narrow corner, okay? Not, and this section in here, okay? When you go between the E and the V, try to make the space between the two parts, this line dividing the E and the V, equally the same, okay? So these are the next steps, okay? So whatever you decide to do in here, I also did another version, but I don't think it works so well, just to show you. I was playing around with another version, with another type of cue, okay? And see what happens in here. So it could work, it's just that I was trying to match spaces, ovals, and that everything looks proportioned. Always remember when you do this type of pieces that it has to be a balance between what happens in here at the top, what happens at the bottom, so that more or less your piece is always going to be divided by north, south, west, and east, and trying to balance flourishes across the piece so that it's not super heavy in one side, super light in another side, okay? Phew, okay, hopefully this helps.